Welcome to our 11th live session out of 12 for dashboard design. Our last session is going to be in about 2 weeks, and it's our graduation ceremony. But we have one amazing special guest today. We're joined by Zach Bowders, who is recently named a Tableau Zen Master, which might sound really exciting to some of you if you know what that is, or you're like, I have no idea what that is, but that's why we're here today, to learn more about the Tableau community and what all the lingo is. He's also the host of the Data Plus Love podcast. And most importantly, I had to pretend to be cold in my Florida house. He's the creator of the drag and drop t-shirts.
We'll have to explain that.
What'd you say?
We'll have to explain that.
We'll have to explain that. So, okay. I was trying to explain this to my 5-year-old and 2-year-old because they're like, Mommy, what is this? My 2-year-old said, Mommy, what on shirt? In her little 2-year-old talk. And I was like, because Tableau is a drag and drop software program. And Zach has a really serious job. So he tries to not be so serious when he's not on work mode. And it's like an 80s metal band. And she's like, But Zach, you don't know this yet, but we're actually going to give away shirts. Since it's a small group, I'm going to buy a drag and drop shirt for everybody who's here today. So you get to be the proud owners of the metal t-shirts. Woohoo! Okay.
And the dragon face actually spells drag and drop too. That's how nerdy that thing is. So
wait, what?
Yeah, drag and drop. Yeah.
I'm going to have to look. It's backwards on my screen right now. So I'm going to have to look at it more and upside down this way. So all right, enough about t-shirts. Let's get into the fun stuff. Zach, tell us about what you're doing now, because we're recording this after your workday. So what do you do in your regular workday?
Sure. So I work at JLL, Jones Lang LaSalle, which is one of the biggest real estate management companies in the world. We have about 91,000 global employees. And in my role is I'm sort of an external facing consultant where I work with different companies around the world. So right now I'm 50-50 on 2 different accounts. And what I help them with is we have different service lines that they sort of, purchase. So we have energy service, facilities management, stuff like that. And so they buy into these different service lines and they use software from us. And what I help do is take the output from that software, the data that they've created, and create Tableau solutions for them to help them with their various questions. Some of those things might be sort of baseline things where it's hey, everyone sort of needs to be able to compare budget versus actual financial data. In other cases, it's more specific to a specific need. We believe that some of our work orders are being closed prematurely. We'd like you to make something to help us diagnose that. So over the course of my day, I get to, do a little bit of both, create some out of the box things where it's standard baseline offerings and other things that are super custom and fun. As Anne said, I'm a Tableau Zen Master, and I'm also a Tableau Ambassador. If you haven't heard of either of those, that's totally normal, because unless you're sort of actively involved in the Tableau online community, there's no reason you ever would have. But a Tableau ambassador is someone that Tableau software has sort of picked out of the crowd that is sort of a super fan in some capacity. So there's a lot of online activity with Tableau, with people creating public work and promoting other people's things and just generally being enthusiastic. So they sort of have several different categories of that. And I was named an ambassador last year. And then a few months ago, I was named a Tableau Zen Master. There are currently 46 in the world. And a Tableau Zen Master it doesn't mean you're necessarily the best of the best of the best, because I'm sure there's plenty of people that I've never even heard of that have skills that would just blow me away. But they want to choose people that sort of showcase the best of what they see from their software. So I have a pretty extensive portfolio and I have a sort of wide breadth of stuff I do. And they chose to honor me with that this year. And they choose new ones every year. So some people will come back the next year. Some people are sort of a single year. So who knows what the future has for me, but Anne picked me before I got it. So she has an eye for talent or whatever Tableau is looking for.
What about your past? What did you do before this, before your JLL job?
Sure. So I live in Memphis, Tennessee, and I spent the last 13 years working at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So specifically, they have the hospital itself, which obviously provides world-class free pediatric cancer and other illness support for children. But I was with ALSAC, which is the fundraising and promotion side. So I worked specifically with monthly giving programs like Partner in Hope, which is, if you've ever seen the ads, like $19 a month and you can support, that sort of thing. So I worked with those for many years, starting in IT and eventually working my way into analytics, which is where I got into Tableau, probably about 5 years ago or so. So it started as something that I was using at work. And very early on, many of the things that I would create at work looked a lot like the things my coworkers would create, because I only saw what was being created in my own office, which is good. That's a fine place to start. But ultimately, there's so many different outlets of cool things being created that could make your work product better. And that's where I sort of stumbled upon to the Tableau community online.
Okay, speaking of the Tableau community online, you have a couple hundred visualizations on the Tableau Public gallery. Am I making the number up? Am I anywhere close?
I think it's like 165.
So you made all of those within the past 5 years then?
Probably the past 3.5, but yeah.
Wow. And then, okay, for people who don't know what the gallery is, can you give us the 101 level overview?
Sure. So if you go to tableaupublic.com, it's a place where you can publish work that you've created. So even if you have a Tableau license at work and you've sort of got the full desktop product, or alternatively, you can download Tableau Public, which is their free version for free. Anyone can download it. Some of the big differences with Tableau Public, you can't sort of save files locally. You can only save them to the cloud, which is Tableau Public. And if you've got something personal you're working on, you can make it invisible so no one can see it. But a lot of the fun is to create stuff and put it up there and share it. So to that end, there's lots of people pursuing passion projects and sort of hunting down data sets that they're interested in on any topic you can imagine. I'm sort of a big pop culture person. So, I watched all 3 John Wick movies and recorded every time he shot someone and then made a whole thing out of that. I enjoy that kind of thing. I also did some stuff with Hans Rosling, who is sort of, one of the big minds in data and healthcare. And I did some of his Gapminder data sets about how the wealth distribution around the world and how we sort of see it as just binary with rich and poor. But really, there's this sort of 4 tiers that make that up. So I'm interested in a lot of stuff. And some of the fun about Tableau Public is seeing what other people make. And one of the best parts is, because you have the same tool that they have, anything that anyone else can make is something that you could also make. So if you see something and it's like, oh, that chart would be really useful for my project at work. Most of the time, people make their workbooks downloadable. So you could download it locally to your machine, pop it open and figure out how they made it, and then, recreate it later for your purpose.
What's your favorite viz that you've got on your profile?
Let's see. Anne might make me pop up something. My favorite, let's see. This is going to be a terrible example, but I will share this with you right now. My favorite is, I am a big movie buff. And my favorite is this visualization of the movie Inception that I created. So you look at this and you're like, how is that made out of data? And that's a valid question, right? But there's all sorts of ways to map data. And one of them is line charts, right? So what I did essentially here is, these are Cartesian points that I mapped to a coordinate. So it's like, this is a line where this is like 0.11 and this is like 0.17 and that sort of thing. So even when you look at something like this and you think, how was that made in a data tool? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, that's clearly made in like, Photoshop, or honestly, PowerPoint's a pretty powerful drawing tool too. But I like to use Tableau for everything. So as Anne was saying, my portfolio is full of things of varying topics and styles. So this is what Tableau Public looks like when you land on it. And if I were to crack open my portfolio and look at it, you can see I've got a wide variety of topics visualized in varying styles, including some things I'm still working on that I've got hidden right there. But something that might be more representative of something you'd want to create at work is this, which is something I actually created when I was applying for my most recent job at JLL. So a lot of employers now, when you apply for stuff, it's not really good enough to just like have stuff on your resume saying like, hey, I have Tableau experience. A lot of times they really want you to prove like, hey, I can do something with Tableau. So I had a little assignment I had to use, and this is Tableau's own superstore data set, which is included in Tableau Public. Everyone can access it. So it's a clickable dashboard where you can filter things down to sort of pivot the rest of the dashboard to give additional context. And I sort of built this on some specs that they gave me, just broad, hey, we would like to understand this, go make something. So partly having a public portfolio, as well as having a public presence. I'm very active on Twitter, sharing the stuff I make and checking out what other people make, as well as sort of being able to do one of those tests is very useful for sort of moving ahead in your career in some of these capacities.
I think sometimes people are hesitant to share things online because they know that their work data can't be shared, like for most of us, obviously, but none of your visits are work related, right? These are all things you've done in all of your spare time.
100%. So not a single thing here is anything I ever, none of it is proprietary data, because you can't go and create something with something that belongs to your employer and share it out there. That's a ticket to Firedsville, and no one else is hiring you after that either. But there's so many public data sets that are available out there through so many different exercises, as well as you can always create your own data. Like if you have a Fitbit or something, you can keep track of your your personal data and sort of make something out of that. And just to show you, I mean, I know some of the stuff I showed you right now is pretty unorthodox. If I were to open my portfolio to the very beginning, the very first thing I ever created, and this looks very much like what stuff was looking like at my work at the time, I created this regarding M. Night Shyamalan and his Rotten Tomatoes scores. So, he's sort of been an embattled director for a while. Like, does he make good stuff? Does he make bad stuff? I don't know. So I created this chart it's a dual axis chart with bars compared against dots essentially, but I used, this ticket shape instead to say, okay, how did the perception of the public compare against the perception of critics? And you can see that like the newer stuff in my portfolio looks a little bit more unorthodox. Some of it, like primarily a lot of stuff I published lately, is a single chart, because I found if I can tell a story effectively with a single chart for a personal project, why wouldn't I? You can see like, some of the spacing's off now. Like I'm actually demonstrating some growth by having older stuff on my portfolio that frankly doesn't age well. Like I look at a lot of the older stuff I created and it's frankly kind of embarrassing to look at. A lot of it's super garish, a lot of it's not super useful, but that's fine, because I'm able to sort of demonstrate, I'm working through some thoughts, I'm working through some habits. And that's what you'll see in a lot of people's portfolios.
I would think that's a lot more impressive to a prospective employer, though, than if you have like one viz made last weekend, to show that you've been continually using the tool in different ways over several years. I'm impressed. I'm not an employer hiring for Tableau skills, but I'm like, wow, look at your gallery. Because yeah, it's amazing. I know too, I told you before we started recording that I was listening to some of your podcasts this morning, and you were talking with Andy Cotgrave about something like, oh, you had a good phrase, or he did, about not using all bar charts and bar charts being really boring, and like just the value of using non-traditional chart types, especially for that public audience, when you don't have to be totally accurate. You want to like grab them in and get them curious about the data, and that's just apples and oranges different from, your real life workplace, where it's totally okay to use just bar chart after bar chart to like get a dashboard out to your colleagues or your employer. So that was a great discussion too. I just really like seeing all the, what did you call it? The non-traditional stuff.
Yeah, it's a high risk, high reward in terms of if you're wanting to share something that like wouldn't be a work product. Like when you're creating a work product, obviously your stuff has to be first off functional, second ease of use, and you also want to get out of your own way. Like some of the temptations are, I want to put a lot of color on here. Like if you looked at my portfolio, it's drowning in color. You have to be very strategic in how you use color in a work product. Like you want color to be the thing that draws the attention. I remember in a previous life, I was asked to check out somebody's dashboard. They're really proud of us, and we're talking about how much the executives really love this dashboard. And the dashboard, first cardinal sin was it was just a a endlessly side-scrolling cross tab. So imagine like a cross tab with like 150 columns, and like that was it. Like that's just the dashboard, just rows and rows and rows of numbers, but nothing sort of pops out. The thing that did pop out, however, was he picked a brand color which was bright red, and made the background for the entire sheet bright red. So executives really love this sheet. They use it all the time. It's the best. And I popped it open. I'm like, well, the first thing here is when I look at this, the first thing I notice is the background, which is the least important thing on the entire sheet. And then in terms of the numbers, there's nothing here to sort of help me pick out what's important. I'm sure Steve Wexler, who's a friend of mine, probably mentioned, if we're lucky, the movie Dolomite Is My Name. There's a scene in that movie where, the executive scrolls his finger down the page, looking at the numbers, comparing, and just imagine how much easier it would have been if there had been a bar chart there. In the same way, like if everything you make is a endless cross tab, and you're not using any sort of, thing to take the cognitive load off the reader, which I mean, I'm saying this, obviously, most of you work in Excel, and I'm not saying this in any way I use Excel every day. But if you're talking like a dashboard, the idea is what can we do to summarize some of this and draw some attention to the thing that's most important first, and then get them to dig into the details of the thing that was most important so that we can lift some of that load off of the users so that they're not having to sort of do all the work. I remember talking with someone once about some work order question where they said, yeah, the people I'm working with really had some questions about, certain groupings. And I had to just go hunt down all the kinds of various types and add up the counts and everything. I said, how easy it would have been for me to put that in a dashboard and just say, this is how many work orders of this type there are. This is how many there are of this type. And then if you clicked on it, it'd give you details of all those rather than you having to go hunt for all of them. Imagine if you had some kind of high level of detail and you work down to, the granularity, rather than just putting everything out there at once.
So because I'm a nerd, look what I happen to have on my desk. This is Steve's big picture with the Dolomite example. So
yeah, I have
page XI
and big book of dashboards. I have both of Steve's books on my desk also.
Let's talk more about some Tableau features, and then I want to get your take on the Tableau community and resources. So tell me your favorite feature of Tableau, but explain it to me like I'm a kindergartner because I may not know what this means. I'm an Excel person.
Sure. Well, much like the t-shirt Anne's wearing, I think my favorite feature, and this is simplistic, is the drag and drop interface of Tableau. So Tableau uses tablets inside of it, essentially. Like every field that you add to Tableau is sorted into two different categories, measures and dimensions. And if you think about those as like a qualitative and quantitative data, so quantitative are your measures, which can be aggregated and summed and, and averaged. And your dimensions are the descriptors of those. So like, gosh, I don't know, departments or locations and that sort of thing. So you've got all these different ways to segment those things that you can aggregate. And it's very easy to create calculations off of both of those kinds of things, just with a right click and opening up a calculation window. It's very easy to sort of memorialize those because those become their own tablets. And then you can drag those onto the frame and use them that way. And even if you're not super accustomed to using the tool comes with lots of predefined charts that you can rapidly create, even if you don't necessarily know all the rules. So if you add a couple different pieces of data to the thing, you go up to the corner, you can click boom and make it a heat map or a pie chart or a bar chart or a line chart. So there's a lot of ease in creating stuff quickly. Some of the easiest things to do are just rapidly prototype stuff. So I use it as a data exploration tool because sometimes you have a big data set and you want to know more about it before you make something out of it. So it's very easy to rapidly create exploratory charts to better understand it. So then you can make the charts that matter most because you don't always necessarily know what's important. And the people you're working with don't always know what they want. They might say, I need to understand the relationship between the donor location and the amount they give, or I need to understand how many gifts people give before they drop off a file and that sort of thing. So sometimes you get a very clear description of what is needed, and sometimes you don't. And a lot of times as the analyst, your job is to sort of come between the client and the ask and say, okay, don't tell me exactly what chart to make. Tell me what you're trying to understand, and I can help us both come to the point where we can make something that, meets that need.
What about features that you wish would be retired? Anything where you're like, I don't know, that button's there, but it's really not that useful, or maybe it's confusing to people, or maybe people just don't use it accurately or the way it was supposed to be used.
Sure, some of the spacing features in Tableau can take some getting used to. Also, some of the fields that control where axes and lines can appear on different charts, like particularly when you're a newer user, understanding where to find those controls and which ones do what can feel kind of arduous. So it's something you kind of pick up from a little bit of practice, or alternatively by popping open someone else's example and seeing which, sort of controls they applied to make things look a certain way. But a lot of times, if you just sort of made an out of the box line chart, it's going to have lots of lines going across it to, show your x-axis and y-axis, which is fine. But, if you take some of that off, it can decrease a little bit of the cognitive load on the user. We talk at JLL about sort of ink on the page. So we have this general rule: when you're making a dashboard, we sort of have our own internal template of, you want it to be these dimensions because that fits on most screens and you're not going to have any sort of scrolling up and down. And then from there, you might have a series of large numbers across the top, which we call bands in the industry. Steve will say he coined that term. I don't know if that's true. And then we might do 4 other charts tops, sort of think about quadrants on the page. But even then, amongst those, we don't want to go overboard. You want to strip out all the stuff that's unnecessary and only put the things on the page that matter most. So that means removing a lot of axes that aren't doing anything, removing all those grid lines that sort of clutter up the page so that the data itself can be the star.
Okay, final feature question. Anything you think that should be added where you're like, oh, if they just added this one button or this one feature, it would make my life so much easier. I know they release new versions all the time though, so maybe everything on your wish list is already there. I don't know.
I have lots of things I'd like. Copy and paste. It's not easy to copy and paste a text box or something that you make. If you copy and paste the chart, sometimes if you do it incorrectly, you'll also apply the same filters from the thing you made. So the filters now affect both charts instead of just each version of it. Text stuff in Tableau is wanting. Your text options are limited to whatever's available on your server. So while the drop-down box may show you 80 different options for text, about 76 of those will all end up looking like Tableau Medium. So just stick to the Tableau family of text choices when you're choosing your things. I mean, there's a lot of little nitpicky things. I'd like for them to include some more modern design aspects where you could have rounded corners or drop shadows, because frankly, square corners are looking pretty dated these days, and it doesn't make it look like a top-class BI product. So lots of people drag in their own elements that they've created to try to enforce some of that. But all that's kind of nitpicky.
Okay, let's talk about some of the Tableau lingo and resources and just community support that's out there, because as an Excel data viz evaluation person, learning about the Tableau community is like, I'm like, wait. What is this Zen master? What is like a Monday this and a Wednesday workout this? So I've got a whole list of terms that I probably like 80% know what they mean. So you talked about Zen master. You talked about ambassadors. What about TUGs? Tell us about TUGs.
So a TUG is a Tableau user group. I remember I first heard about a TUG the same day I heard the joke about drag and drop. I was in New York City, and our instructor told us there was a TUG across the river in New Jersey, and we had no idea what it meant. But a TUG are I won't say most cities, but many cities around the country have a group of Tableau users that meet periodically, whether it be once a month or once a quarter. There's probably one not far from you if you live near any medium-sized city. I say that considering my city, Memphis, we had to create our own Tableau user group because it just didn't exist. So Tableau user groups typically meet, like I said, once a month, once a quarter, it varies. And they'll have speakers come and present on different features. All these are mostly like None of these are Tableau employees. These are all just sort of impassioned professionals that are trying to help themselves be better and are trying to help other people out. So some tugs have competitions where they might do it, like play some games or something to show off some of the features. Some have more formalized speaking processes. Some of them, if you're in a large area, can have hundreds of participants at a time. I can tell you my tug probably had about 20 at a time, but I've also been to, say, the Twin Cities tug in Minneapolis, and they had about 60 folks show up, and they had some really great presentations about how to use features in a certain way, or here are some things you probably didn't know. And it's really great to just get more exposure and also to connect with other professionals using the same tools you have that are in your local area. Because, well, for one thing, in a selfish way, maybe you'll want a different job in the future, who knows. But on the other hand, like, it's great to know people personally that are doing the same stuff you're doing, because someday you're going to have a question about something, and it's great to have someone to lean on.
What about Makeover Monday, Workout Wednesday, not to be confused with Tidy Tuesday, which is for the R community? I don't know if there's anything for Thursday or Friday or Saturday or Sunday, but tell us at least about the two Tableau ones I know, Makeover Monday and Workout Wednesday.
Sure. So there are various Tableau community exercises, and these are something that it's really hard to stumble upon unless someone tells you they exist. So when I first started getting into Tableau and I published my first viz, the M. Night Shyamalan viz online, and I started looking for people saying stuff about Tableau, I saw people using the hashtag Makeover Monday. And I thought it was something they just used to sort of promote their stuff. Because I'd see people publish a data viz and say Makeover Monday. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So Makeover Monday is a community exercise, just like Workout Wednesday. These are sort of moderated exercises by a couple people. So each of these exercises has, probably 2 or 3 people tops that each week go find a public data set of some kind, typically one that has already been visualized, but maybe not in the best way, and say, hey, how would you do this? And what people do is they download the data set. The idea with Makeover Monday is to take about an hour to go, open the data set, make something yourself out of it, and then publish it to Tableau Public and share it on like either Twitter or LinkedIn. I'll tell you, for all the toxicity of Twitter, the data community is actually pretty good. So people genuinely, if you share something on there, people are supportive. People, say, hey, good job. And they'll typically follow you or check out your portfolio. It's a great opportunity to, on one hand, get some practice and also see what other people would do. So like I said before, if you have the same tool, and in this case, the same data set, and you see someone else do something that's better than yours, which you probably will at first, you're probably going to see like, wow, somebody made that. Then that's definitely something that you could make also. And much like the conversation that Anne mentioned with me and Andy Cockreeve about how some people will choose unorthodox chart types, you'll see a lot of that too, where rather than making something that you would be able to present at work, sometimes people do something wholly unorthodox that maybe isn't super useful. But in those cases, think of that as like a concept car. It's like you see this at the show, it looks really cool. You're probably never going to see it, but, take it for what it is and be like, okay, that was fun. It got me to look at it. Because there is definitely always a balance of that in any visualization you create, whether it be for fun or for your professional life. If no one wants to look at it, it's not worth anything because no one will use it.
What is the Datafam?
Okay. Before that, let me complete my last thought because I blanked. Workout Wednesday is one of the other significant data viz challenges. And this is one that I would compare if you're working out to leg day. So while Makeover Monday is take this data set and make something out of it, Workout Wednesday is they have a data set. They've already created something technical out of it. Now you figure out how to make the same thing. So this is very useful for you will be working on a data set at work. You'll be asked to make something of it. And you'll be like, I don't know how to do that. That's what Workout Wednesday is for. Makeover Monday is for speed and agility, because if you start doing Makeover Mondays, you'll find that your speed to market in terms of making a new dashboard at work will go up dramatically. I'm not even kidding. Like just the muscle memory of, okay, this is how I create it. This is how I would make that chart if I needed to. it really cuts down on your learning time on the job. And Workout Wednesday is okay, these are the hard technical questions that I'm going to have to conquer. But if you sweat through some of those, you'll find that you learn new methods of accomplishing charts, sometimes very sophisticated charts that aren't easy to make out of the box, but can deliver a lot of value. And like Anne was saying, the Datafam, which you'll see hashtag Datafam, is sort of, it's primarily the Tableau community. You'll see some people in the greater data community use it, but it's mostly a Tableau thing. It's something people will tag on Twitter to sort of draw attention to Tableau related posts, whether it be data visualizations that they've created or upcoming TUG events, or I think there's a Tableau Live event coming up tomorrow. It's just a sort of way to get attention for Tableau related stuff online. But also it's the people. So there are a lot of very passionate people out there. And typically if you see people using the hashtag Datafam, those are sort of the super users that are out there, creating the public visualizations, participating in the exercises, and a lot of them end up becoming ambassadors and Zen masters eventually.
I already know the answer to this, but other people might not. What is Datafam News?
So Datafam News is available on my podcast channel. It's Mark Bradbourne's a Tableau employee, but before that, he was a big sort of Datafam participant. And Datafam News was a what's going on this week in the Tableau world, whether there's TUGs coming up, Tableau events that you can attend, or trainings and that sort of thing. Tableau is actually pulling a lot of that stuff internal. Not that they're taking it from Mark, but he was doing that in absence of an official capacity. So Tableau itself is getting a lot better about promoting a lot of their own stuff, which is great. Which leaves my podcast mostly to just me having on interesting data related people like Andy Cockery of Tableau's brand ambassador, or Steve Wexler, or coming this Wednesday, RJ Andrews, who is a data historian and just really brilliant guy.
RJ actually has a GoFundMe right now, I think, for 3 books that he wants to write. I think in all of his spare time, goes to libraries and looks through resource. I think he goes to university libraries and goes to the special collection. I don't know. I'm putting words in his mouth, but he finds maps from hundreds of years ago and is so cool.
He does. He's restored all these maps. There's a whole book about Florence Nightingale and sort of her effect on, sort of the public perception of health. She's one of the early data practitioners that was really big, as well as 2 others that are part of that Kickstarter he's doing. But yeah, RJ is a very impassioned person about sort of bringing thought to the idea of data visualization, because as much as we talk about best practices now, people have been doing this for hundreds of years, and there's lots of stuff we could learn from looking at some of that.
Okay, you mentioned Tableau Live, which I heard about the first time this morning on Mark's Datafam News segment, and he was like, Datafam, Tableau Live is coming up, something like that. I was like, what is this? I know there's the conference. I know there are TUG meetings, but where does Tableau Live fit in? I've never heard of that before.
Tableau Live is pretty new. It's kind of an amorphous concept, and I'm not 100% sure myself. Basically, Tableau's conference is a huge deal. Their last conference before COVID hit had about 20,000 attendees. So much so that they have to host it in Las Vegas now. They really don't have another choice. So we'll see if there's a physical one of those in the future. But Tableau Live, in my opinion, is sort of a stopgap in lieu of large physical events. It's a chance for them to bring together a lot of training, a lot of inspiration, but to a larger crowd and online. So they did a Tableau conference-ish in the fall, the same time that they would typically do their in-person conference, which had dozens of different seminars of different skill levels and topics. And Tableau Live are sort of mini versions of that.
Okay. For people who like learning about Tableau through podcasts, that's one of my favorite learning ways. What do you call these? Avenues, whatever the word is. I know we've got your Data Plus Love podcast. Who else is podcasting about Tableau or data in particular that you think is doing really good work?
Sure. I would check out the Tableau Wannabe podcast. It's best to Google under that. They've changed their name recently to, I believe, the Tableau World podcast, but they are the oldest Tableau specific podcast, I believe. But there's lots of other sort of data centric podcasts that are sort of in that sphere. But that's where I would recommend going for Tableau specifically at this point in terms of podcasts. Beyond that, YouTube is very big for Tableau learning. Um, I would look up Tableau Tim on there. He might be one of the best I've seen in terms of tutorials on there, as well as the Flurlage twins. They are twins and both Tableau Zen masters. So that's they're characters as well as very brilliant in some of the stuff they do. And it's just worth checking out. If you ever have trouble figuring out how to do something with Tableau, hit YouTube first. Most of the time, there's probably a 5-minute walkthrough of how to accomplish something. Sometimes you're trying to make a chart like a barbell chart, and you're like, I don't know how to do that. Tableau doesn't tell me how because it's not one of the out-of-the-box chart types. Well, 5 minutes later, you'll be able to make it if you just go on YouTube.
What about books? We mentioned The Big Picture, which isn't, I don't think it's necessarily dashboard specific. I don't think, but of course the big book of dashboards too. What are some other Tableau or dashboard or data books that you really like?
Gosh, those are some of the most important that I would recommend. The Big Book of Dashboards, I think, is super influential in terms of the industry. In my opinion, I think the Big Picture is better in the sense that the Big Picture has one chapter, chapter 4, which is about 80 pages long, which that's a huge, crazy chapter. But it is really like data visualization in a nutshell. So it starts off with the idea of, okay, so you would like to make something visual, and it starts off with the idea of taking a tabular view, and what happens if you add a bar chart to one side, and then what happens if you add color. So it starts with taking something that we're all very familiar with, especially if you're an Excel user, and sort of extending that a little bit. And this book was made not just for the data professional that's creating stuff, but as well as the consumer of data, because we all have, sometimes we're the consumers, sometimes we're the creators. And we all have people that we sometimes have to sell ideas on, right? Because one of the most common things you'll hear as a data professional is just show me the data. And what they really mean is just give me the spreadsheet, just spit it out, I'll figure it out. But really what you can do as the data practitioner is, if you're sort of measured in your application of different chart types, you can lift so much of that load off of them that they think that they want. But if you can summarize some things and aggregate it and make it a little easier to understand what's going on in the big picture, not to summarize the book, then they won't have to look at every single data point along the way. In fact, they could look at some of the data points, but more specifically to the thing that's most important, and not just all of them and try to dig for what's most important. So when you're assembling like a dashboard or a data tool and you're doing it in a measured way, then you're doing the hard work for them, and you're making something extensible that will be delivering that value so they don't have to think as hard. It's a big book of dashboards, or the big picture,
Or both.
or both.
In all of our spare time. No, they're both really good. I love them in different ways. I want to talk more about your advice for people getting started in Tableau. But before that, are there any Tableau resources or books or blogs or podcasts or event? There's so much. There's so many to choose from. Any that I missed that you feel like are worth mentioning?
If you're a sports person and you'd like some sports data sets, there's Sports Viz Sunday. Not my cup of tea. I'm a nerd, but it's fun. They make very interesting stuff. But yeah, one of the biggest things I would say if you would like to learn Tableau is to just start doing stuff. And I realize I'm saying that as if it's an extracurricular. You can probably hear my kids yelling in the background at this point. So I'm not doing all of this in complete ignorance of the fact that I'm taking on an additional burden. But what I do know is every evening I have about 45 minutes of time between the time my kids go to bed and my wife is willing to see me. Like when she's like, look, I just need some time, just leave me alone. And during that time, I usually listen to a podcast or turn on the TV and start messing around with some data. So everyone has probably 1 hour a week that they could dedicate. So during that time, I would say find a blog that you like, watch some YouTube videos, or realistically pick one of these exercises. Like Makeover Mondays, an excellent starting place. Just hashtag Makeover Monday on Twitter. You'll find it really quick. And it may not always be a topic you're interested in. And that's okay. Because if you sort of pick up a rhythm, eventually you'll probably start looking for your own data sets or creating your own. But Makeover Monday is a lot of fun for one thing, because it's a group activity. It's taking something that training is not the most fun thing on earth. I'll be honest. Sorry, Anne, it's not. But training can, especially if it's self-training, like who really wants to go and just do a series of exercises all on their own? It feels kind of lonely. But if you're doing something as part of a group, you're now getting to participate with other humans. You're now, becoming part of a bigger picture, and you're getting to celebrate what others are making, and they're checking out what you're making, and you're learning not just by what you created, but what you could have created. So I'd say start with Makeover Monday. It's a great place.
That's why this course has 12 live sessions so that we could, chat together a little bit. We did case studies and stuff too. Okay. I want to show you, because you mentioned your 45 minutes at night. Can I show you what I've been doing at night in my 45 minutes? Can you see this? This took like 3 weeks. So
wow.
Because I'm crazy. So I'm actually going to watch your Tableau Tim YouTube channel, I think, after this. I was looking for YouTubers on Tableau and I wasn't finding any that I thought were fantastic. So I'm going to give it another try.
If any of you find out that you love it, jump on in.
All right.
There's a lot of opportunity. If you find out you love anything, just start doing it. That's anything that you love is something that you will do. And that's why I switched over to covering topics in data visualization that I found I was interested in, because I found I did it more often.
How about audience questions for Zach? Who's got Zach? I told them they could ask you Tableau questions if they had any, or resource questions, or questions about, I know you have a lot of thoughts on what it's like to actually get data and dashboards like used in organizations and like different roles people need to play internally. Anybody have questions? Let us know. Or Zach, anything that I didn't ask about that you wish I would have asked you about?
I would honestly just say the best thing you can do is start doing. Like just pick something that you could be interested in and start practicing. It's not going to be the easiest at first, and you might feel like a little kid compared to some of the other stuff you see, but that's 100% okay. Make something, and especially make something and share it. Because if you make it yourself and you just sort of hold it back, you're going to miss out on some of the feedback you're going to get, which is mostly going to be encouraging. But people like to see other people succeed.
Bob's got a note. Bob, you want to tell us about this resource that you mentioned? Information Lab. Sure. Tell us more.
My little brain fart on the timing there. I've been for the last couple of months sitting in on what they call their Thursday training at 3, which is 3 London time. 90 minutes to 2 hours of Tableau training, totally free, scaled at beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Beginner and intermediate I can do. When I hold on long enough to get through the advanced, I'm feeling good. But they sign up for free. They give you a data dump 10 minutes before, log in, and you go work on something with an instructor for between 90 and 120 minutes, totally free.
So the Information Lab in the UK, Andy Kriebel is one of their lead instructors, and he's one of the co-founders of Makeover Monday. The Information Lab is a massive consultancy that has global offices around the world, and they're fed into from something called the Data School, where they sort of recruit people, bring them in, train them for 2 years, and make them consultants that then work for the Information Lab or go on to work for other people. So it's something kind of incredible. That's a lot more powerful in Europe. I don't think they have anything in the US at this point, but yeah, they make some very good analysts over there.
Other questions for Zach or resources of your own that you'd like to share? Ellen, can I call on you? How have you been learning Tableau?
Mostly just starting to play around with it, but I've not really dived very deeply or shared it. So I really like the encouragement to share. And my question for Zach is, what are some of the features about Tableau that's not just replicating Excel? What are some of the features that you have found that have been really powerful for either data cleaning or, I don't know.
Well, Tableau does have its own essentially baked in tool now called Tableau Prep to help with data prep and cleaning. One of the downsides of Tableau Prep is it requires Maestro to be scheduled, which is a separate purchased feature. So not a ton of people use Tableau Prep in those means. But one of the really nice things that I find about Tableau is the ease of interactivity of a published dashboard. So like if you look at the different elements in a given dashboard, you can make bar charts that when you click on a bar, filter the rest of the dashboard to reflect the contents of that, or scatter plots that you click on an element and can break out into further sub elements of that. So there's features like sets and parameters where you can use a parameter to change the contents of a chart. Say, well, I don't really want to see this by client. I want to see this by location. The entire chart can flip to a different type of chart on the fly. I had one request from a client once where they really wanted a map on a page. And I knew the map they really wanted wasn't going to be of a lot of value. But by using a parameter switch, I was able to make it so I could replace that with an entirely different chart on the fly if they just clicked a toggle. And that different chart could show a list view of the same data from, in context, sorted by different things. So sorted by maybe number of orders by location or population of such and such. So you're able to do a lot of different interactivity and swapping of things to make better use of the same amount of real estate, as well as allow for drill down and curiosity. I think that's one of the biggest things is if you design a dashboard well, and even if it only has like 4 elements on it, if those 4 elements can all interact in a meaningful way, you can give people lots of options for exploration and data discovery that maybe would have been more difficult in a strictly tabular view.
Thank you.
No problem.
Jean, I see your question. Do you want to take yourself off mute and give us some more info?
Oh, yes. You did show an example with revenue, and I was wondering if you had any examples with the more standard profit and loss type of statements that we typically see in financial presentations.
I don't personally, because all the stuff I did with that was all internal, and most of the stuff I make tends to be a little more fanciful. But I do have some very good examples that I can share with Anne to pass on to the class. I have a friend, Klaus, in Germany, who's also a Zen master, who his passion is profit and loss. So he has some very excellent charts on that, both sort of traditional P&L as well as new ways of visualizing and thinking about it that sort of can fire people up and make them, more visually see differences. So yeah, I'll pass those on to Anne.
Great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
His passion is profit and loss. I've got that memorized.
Well, I like the profit part.
But in the meantime, if you look for Klaus Schulte on Tableau Public, if you open that up and look for him, he is out of Germany and he's got a lot of really great stuff.
Thank you.
No problem.
If anybody has any more questions, now's the time. Last call for questions for Zach. I was going to hold a giveaway with the shirts. Bob, you don't know this because I saw you popped in a little bit late, but you're all getting, if my webcam will focus, drag and drop shirts. Woohoo! So you have to all
drag and drop. And it looks like the side of an 80s heavy metal van.
Well, when I describe what Tableau is to Excel users, I say like, do you know what a pivot table is? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, you know what charts are? Yeah. And like, that's what Tableau is. It's like you drag and drop, but then the charts like part of the same step. It's all kind of part of like step one, where in Excel, it's more like 2 separate steps. So that's what I think is really magical about Tableau is they've basically like eliminated a whole step for us. So because you drag and drop. Okay. You all have to email me your address so that I can go in. And Zach, I ordered the shirt like 6 months ago, whenever we spoke on your podcast. And I've been waiting to wear it, but I didn't want to like take pictures in it. So I'll find it. Hopefully you're still selling these. Yeah.
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Hopefully you have like a box in your basement, or it's probably through like a t-shirt company or something. Cool. Zach, what's the best way for people to keep in touch with you?
Sure. Look up Zach Bowders on LinkedIn. I'm on there. I'm really the only one, especially the only one with Tableau near me. But I'm also heavily active on Twitter, strictly for data visualization at Zach Bowders. Look me up on there, or go on Tableau Public if you'd like to see my portfolio and just type in Zach Bowders, and everything on there is downloadable if you see something that you wanted to figure out how it worked. But any of those means is a great way to find me.
And subscribe to his podcast.
Steve Wexler, recording with him tomorrow.
That'll be a
And
good
RJ
one.
Andrews coming Wednesday.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Zach. Kate says, thank you, Zach and Anne. Great. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I'll see you at some point, Zach. Maybe I'll come to Tableau, the conference, whenever it's in person again. I want to go. I'm missing my in-person events, and Vegas sounds great. So maybe we can meet up at some point. And then for everybody else, I'll see you at our class graduation party in a couple of weeks. So you can bring your completed dashboards that you've been working on throughout our 6 months together and share them. Show us what you built. All right. Bye, everybody. See you later.
Bye.